field.
All right, what is up, guys? This is DDP, and I am joined here today by Max Levy, and we are going to talk a little bit about the newest Dallas Maverick, Isaiah Roby. Max, how you doing today?
I'm feeling really good. I've been kind of high on Roby for a little while now, and also they picked up a really underrated two-way signing as well, so we'll get to that. I'm feeling pretty good, though.
Good. So initially, when the draft came around and everything, we were doing live reaction for over 3 hours that night, Annie and I. And Mavericks initially had pick 37. We know they then trade down to 45. They pick up 2 additional second-round picks in the process. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Do we know specifically what year those picks come into play? Are they the same year, or is it like the next 2 years they picked those up?
I actually do know the picks. I just don't have them memorized, so I have it in this chart somewhere.
Okay.
So I have it under the Pistons, though.
Yeah.
Let me just go to there. The Mavericks received a 2020 pick from the Utah Jazz, as well as a 2021 pick from the Portland Trailblazers. Those are both second-round picks.
Okay. Interesting. So, for those, we found out after the pick came in for the Mavericks, I think it was Brad Townsend was saying the scouts at the AAC were, quote, giddy because they got their guy and picked up 2 additional second-round picks in the process. That's encouraging if that's the truth, if they really feel like they got their guy in that case, because I know the instant reaction, even us on the show, we didn't know a whole lot about Roby. We were much more focused on some other front court players, so we were a bit taken by surprise as well there. That kind of happens sometimes with live reaction videos. If it's a name that you didn't have necessarily on your list, you might be a little in the dark. So what can you tell us a little bit about Roby? I got the highlights of him going here from his time with Nebraska. Can you tell us a little bit about him, a little of his game?
So I would sum it up in, I guess, offense, defense.
Mm-hmm.
I would go that way. So offensively, the biggest thing that's going to pop is his athleticism. He's able to really get up there and explode up to the rim very quickly as well. And the interesting thing with that is he's able to not only explode up to the rim, but drive inside as well, so he doesn't need to be cutting in order to do that. However, there is definitely a level of concern about how well he can do that, like in the half court or against non-closeouts, because it's a bit more difficult for him to create his own offense. In addition, he's pretty instinctive as like a cutter, and he's pretty athletic in the pick and roll, even though you rarely get to see him run it. So it's going to be interesting to see if he ever gets any opportunities on that front. Another interesting facet of his game is, while he's not like a flashy passer, he's had some pretty nice flashes of being able to read and react on the court and find his teammates inside and on cuts, even kicking out the shooters while on drives. That's pretty promising for a guy that's kind of used to playing, I wouldn't say used to playing center, even though that was his role in college. He originally came up as a point guard, then he had a growth spurt, and then he got miscast in the center role, and he was trying to just figure out what he was really supposed to do.
Okay.
The jump shot is a significant swing skill for him. It's relatively fluid. There's a couple areas where it could be faster.
Yeah, there's definitely some with that.
Yeah, but at the same time, the form is a solid base, and he's been improving it from like nothing to where like when he came into college, he didn't really have a jump shot. He was mostly using his athleticism and speed to get past players in high school and what the shot has turned into has been pretty quick development when you think about it. I mean, everyone throws out these Dwight Powell comparisons for Roby, and they're just not similar basketball players. So, the Roby is a completely different type of player, whereas when you see Dwight Powell, like in college, Dwight Powell wasn't shooting long-range jumpers because he wasn't able to do it at all.
Yeah.
And Roby's coming to a place where if you look at his history as a shooter compared to even Dorian Finney-Smith, he's already farther ahead as a shooter than Dorian was in his third year of college, which was his redshirt sophomore year at Florida.
Mm-hmm.
People forget Dorian's actually really old. When he came into the league, he came into the league already being 23 years old.
Right.
Whereas Roby is still 21. So, everyone worried about, saying this guy is a long-term project or that, what's the ceiling is kind of missing the point because, number one, he's a lot younger than people are willing to think he is. And then he has defensive skills, which I'll get to, that actually provide an outlet for him to play, a small role right away on this team should they need him to.
Yeah. He's definitely got a lot of shot blocking ability that I'm seeing just looking at his highlights here again. About half his highlights looks like dunks, and the other half looks like shot blocks. So,
yeah, I would say shot blocking is definitely an integral part of his game. He is not going to be the type of guy to stand at the rim and block shots. He's usually coming in from the weak side.
Yep.
But he's able to read and react on the floor very well. Sometimes he's a bit too aggressive, and this can really land him in foul trouble. But, again, he's not used to being a center, so I don't feel like that's going to be exposed in the NBA as much. With that being said, he's also pretty mobile, so he's able to switch on to, I would say, 4s and 3s at a high level and contain their drives on closeouts. It's not like he's a lockdown defender or anything, but he's not going to be exposed most of the time either. Now, when you start getting into creative shooting guards and point guards, I would say there are legitimate concerns about his ability to guard those just because he can't really predict handlers that well.
Okay.
He doesn't have those type of instincts. At the rim, with the shot blocking, his athleticism is probably the biggest thing that helps him get as many blocks as he does, but he is pretty instinctive with his timing. He's just not very good at figuring out how to block without fouling.
Gotcha.
And that really landed him in trouble. Also, a huge concern for his defensive ability is how well he can defend against stronger players.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you saw the numbers. For a while, people had him listed in college as 6'9" with 7'3" wingspan and 230.
Yeah.
Reality is 6'8.5" with a 7'1" wingspan, which is still very good, but that's not really the issue. And then 214 pounds. 214 pounds for a guy that's 6'9".
Yeah, it's not very big. Not a lot of.
Especially for a guy that's not in a position to play small forward much because he's still developing a shot. He needs to be a 4 most of the time on the court, and you don't want to play him at small ball 5 because he's not physical enough.
Right. So you see some versatility with him defensively. You said he came in as a point guard, had the growth spurt, got moved to center, probably fits in now from terms of his size around the small forward position. That's good for him to have the ability to guard multiple positions, but yeah, he's going to have to add more weight if he's going to be able to bang down low and all of that with some of the other front court players he might come against. But I'm curious to see. I guess this is the next thing I was you touched on it earlier, but you think there's a role for him in this upcoming season of some kind, maybe not a consistent role, but that he can actually get out there and do a little bit this year.
Yeah, I mean, here's the truth is the Mavericks are looking at this point at two things when it comes to how to fill out their roster. Number one, how can we acquire better depth in free agency, maybe a star, but I'm not betting on it, and you shouldn't either. And number two, how can we save money so that we can gather more players? Roby is basically, in terms of his effectiveness on the court, is probably going to be 75 to 80% of Dorian Finney-Smith right away, I'd imagine. And I would say he has a significantly more potential to be more effective right away because of the shot blocking ability. Dorian was not racking up stocks with the steals and blocks in college the way Roby was.
Right.
And that's usually an indicator of how effective they can be as a defender. So that's very promising.
So do you think of him sort of as an insurance policy for Dodo in terms of a means of kind of churning over that role on the team and not necessarily having to re-sign Dodo? Because Dodo's one of the free agents for the Mavericks this year, correct? Restricted, I think?
Yes, that would be exactly why I'd want to have Roby in the first place, because we're all kind of worried that Dorian might get paid like plus $5 million.
The Aminu type thing where, we like him, we want him, but someone's going to offer more than we're willing to pay him at the time.
Yeah, Aminu got paid a ton.
Yeah, Aminu got a ton.
Paid. Dorian's not getting paid half as much as Aminu, but Aminu was still getting paid like 13-14 million. So Dorian's getting paid like $5 million. That's a lot of money to invest into a guy that like struggles to shoot the ball.
Yeah,
and defensively can't really make an impact in the like guarding the rim. He's pretty limited at guarding the perimeter. Whereas Roby, you kind of have an inside-out defender who can sort of play as a big man in the pick and roll and has some passing ability, and also potentially in transition can be dynamic with his athleticism and his ability to handle the ball in space, not in traffic. And you have something serious to put on the court whenever you are looking to fill out like the 10th man or the 9th man or something along those lines. And like, let's put it this way. Imagine a lineup where you have Roby and Maxey on the court together, like off the bench. They're talking about facing like mediocre big men that might not be ridiculously strong, and that's probably a pretty effective lineup. You have two big men that can run the floor, handle in transition, are athletic, block shots, have developing three-point shots. That's a pretty tough tandem to beat up in certain matchups. So that's where I think Roby would shine a lot, as well as maybe next to like a more three-point shooting bit. Like I think Roby is the ultimate project, like quote-unquote 4 to put next to Porzingis at quote-unquote 5, even though Porzingis wants to call himself a 4. He's really a 5. So
yeah. One moment here. I got to grab. I forgot I wasn't wearing the Rondo punishment jersey, so I had to grab that real quick. You can keep talking with them for a second. I just got to set the headphones down while I grab that.
All right. So I kind of went over his game already, but I actually wrote a profile on him last fall, and most of that I said on this profile is still the case now. It's just he's a lot more confident now than he used to be, because he used to be like a more fringe, like not fringe, but fringe starter, and now he's like a full-time starter in Nebraska, and that really helped him come into his own a bit. But on the top, the near consensus sleeper of the class, Isaiah Roby, needs to act upon the flashes he showed last season in limited action by playing more minutes and taking on a larger role for the Huskers. So far, this hasn't come into existence, but he probably is still recovering from an off-season foot injury, and some hope can be had if he can keep his fouls down to at least increase his minutes. Roby's multifaceted toolbox on the offensive floor starts with his passing game, slinging passes cross-court to open shooters or backdoor cutters from the post, while driving or even over at the top of the key. Driving the ball, Roby mostly relies on moving in a straight line, but he's quick enough to get to the cup and finish past the wing defenders, and can absolutely embarrass opposing big men with his burst whenever he chooses to attack, which I'll get to. Once he reaches the basket, Roby doesn't require much time or space to lift off the ground and dunk, but in addition, he sleuths his body around contact and finishes reverse and extension layups. Again, nothing like flashy, but he's able to get his long arms around. His catch-and-shoot jumpers create even further a matchup nightmare for opposing teams with a relatively compact and somewhat fluid form, high release point, which allows him to shoot over many contests because of his 7'1" wingspan. Defensively, Roby rotates around the floor to plug holes left by teammates, hits passes from behind his man to break up the play and initiate fast breaks, cuts off drives by not giving up the inside of baseline angles, as well as getting in a low and wide defensive stance, pressuring the ball handler with his arms. Roby collects blocks on a wide range of areas, such as pacing himself coming back in transition so he reaches the rim in the exact moment that his opponent's attempting layup, helping on the weak side, or keeping pace with his man on drives and swallowing up his shots. With all this praise, Roby still needs to become a more physical player, often getting beat up on the glass and in the post, and often resorting to fouling as a result. Unless Roby can take off this season, these concerns are enough for me to worry about small sample size, particularly in regards to his jumper and his passing. Nonetheless, Roby's potential and versatility shines bright in a conference that lacks much top-end draft talent.
So do you think in that case, him going at 45, do you feel like we know about his measurables as we were talking about, but do you think he went later in the draft than he should have and that the Mavericks might have picked up something like of value at that point? Or do you think that it's enough of a project that there's a reason he was in that mid-40 range?
I think if you were to ask me in terms of had the draft gone a more predictable way, I would say it was a complete steal.
Okay.
But there were definitely some talents on the board left at that pick that I would have preferred.
Right.
But at the same time, I understand why those other talents weren't chosen. The one in particular that has me feeling some type of way is Talen Horton-Tucker out of Iowa State. Mm-hmm. But I understand why they didn't pick him, because the biggest issue with him is that he's very athletic, kind of undersized, but has long arms, strong, but his biggest asset to his offensive game is his slashing, and then defensively he just collects stocks because he's athletic, but he has no idea what he's really doing.
Right.
And that's concerning. He played absolutely zero defense in all of his high school career, so he's
come a ways on that front.
Defensive development, like, he's going to take a long time, and I'm not sure that Rick Carlisle would have the patience for it. So.
Okay, interesting. So it's good to hear he could have a little bit of a role with us and all of that, because my initial thought was that he was going to be a project of a year or two before he really saw the court. But again, that was on very limited intel at first. So it's encouraging to hear that he could potentially at least get out there and show us a little bit of something and not just be a guy who disappears, in Frisco with the legends and we don't see him for a year or so. Let me ask you this regarding, there's a bunch of questions obviously popping up in the chat regarding free agency and potential trades and things of that. I know we've addressed some of these, but what are your thoughts on what we were hearing about the potential Kemba Walker sign-in trade, where we would be sending, what was it? It was Brunson and Jackson in a sign trade to Charlotte. Do you have any thoughts on that? I ask only because we haven't had a chance to do a show to talk about it since that was the talk, I think, Thursday or Friday.
I mean, I think it's a fun idea. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, that pretty much is where I fall on that front as well. The return for Charlotte, I mean, a sign and trade to me, if you're Charlotte and you're going to lose them, a sign and trade would make sense. But at the same time, yeah, the odds of that deal doesn't feel super likely. And maybe you would have the answer on this. Since it's a sign and trade, the Supermax would be in effect for him in that case, right? Because he would sign with Charlotte, could sign the Supermax, and then be traded to whether it's Dallas or wherever he goes if they did a sign and trade.
I believe it's available. It depends on whether or not Charlotte's willing to offer it, because I'm pretty sure the more you put on that contract, the harder it is to move. Yeah. And I'm not sure if they paid him the full Supermax, if the Mavericks would be able to pull that trade off with just Jackson and Brunson. They might need to add another contract, like maybe Courtney Lee. And
that'd be the one bright side for people, is seeing the Courtney Lee or Hardaway Jr. contracts moved. I'd be more in favor of moving the Courtney Lee than the Hardaway, but even still,
I'd be in favor of moving the Hardaway if you don't have to give up significant assets, but the Mavs have no assets to give up, so he's not going anywhere, and I think it's just time to accept that.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think that Hardaway could be a good player for us off the bench still. I'm not completely out on him. Courtney Lee is the one that I'm more open to moving, whether that's the stretch provision or anything like that. So it's interesting to talk about these hypotheticals, because that is the thing this time of year that everyone's interested in, is that even though in some of these cases the suggestions that you hear are not the most likely, the Steven Adams trade proposals, we've seen that talked about. We've seen Dennis Schroeder as well on the Oklahoma City front, trading him to Dallas. I don't think Schroeder fits what we want to do very well at all. But yeah, there's all kinds of speculation on that front. Do you think there's a player like that who would pair well with Porzingis, whether it would be Steven Adams or if they were to make some other kind of big man trade, obviously?
I mean, I think the obvious answer is Al Horford.
Well, Horford wouldn't be a trade; he'd be a signing.
Oh
at
yeah,
this point,
you're thinking of. Oh, sorry, you're thinking of trades. I mean, I guess the only trades out there are Capella and Adams, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not a fan of either of those next to Porzingis.
Yeah, Adams, I think he's $25 million this year, and then I think he's got like 2 more years, and it goes all the way up to like 28, I think. Which Adams, I like Adams, but he's not worth that kind of money at that point. Obviously, his weakness would be perimeter, switching on the screen and all that. But I think there's a lot of dirty work that Adams does that doesn't always shine through that I like a lot. Great screen setter, great hustle and everything. Will give you a double-double and has I think a pretty underrated post-up game as well. I think he's got a lot of touch around the rim. So I'm a fan of Adams, but not at that price tag necessarily. And that's obviously, if you make a trade, that is your move at that point. Yeah,
and I think it's not even necessarily on the face of it, the price tag for me with Adams. It's just the fit with KP is going to cause offenses to slice us up whenever we make the playoffs.
Right.
And
because you can't have 2 front court guys that aren't great in terms of horizontal mobility.
Yeah, for sure. And or up and down, like north-south either. It's all bad.
Okay.
But the big issue with it for me is the argument in favor of trading for a guy like Adams or Capella or signing Nikola Vucevic, anybody that gets a whole ton of rebounds. The argument in favor is like, oh, well, our team isn't that good, and we need someone that can get us extra possessions.
Yeah.
Well, how about I flip that on our head and say, instead of getting extra possessions and prioritizing that, why don't we just make our team better in the first place? Like, shouldn't that be obvious? I don't know. That's just me, though. I feel like we can sign a guy to get us extra possessions after we make the team better.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems like a logical way to go about it. And that's why I don't want anything to do with Vucevic.
Right.
Not particularly anyway, or Adams or Capella. Why I'm very excited about the possibility of Al Horford, even though I know it's actually not going to happen.
Right.
We all know it's not, because that's just how it is.
With Horford, I don't. It doesn't make sense to me. I mean, I get that he opted out of his 1-year, $30 million player option with Boston, and the belief that you see floating around out there is a 4-year deal worth something around the 112 range. That's not money I would pay to a 33, about to be 34-year-old Horford. Because then at that point you're talking about 37, 38-year-old Horford. There's no way there's no way that you get the full life of that contract without him fully dropping off and becoming a problematic thing. Does it make you much better in maybe the year, maybe 2 immediate? Yeah, but I think that's a case where it just feels like a guy that's on the complete outside of that window we look at. Like when we're talking about pairing talent with Luka and KP, we're talking about a third foundational piece, and that means somebody in their mid to late 20s, much more so than a 33-year-old Horford, who, while he's still been very good and while he would fit fine next to KP immediately, I just don't think that the rest of the roster is there right now for him to still be at that level of play that warrants that kind of money per year he would get and fit the rest of the team. You know what I mean? The window.
Yeah. The biggest thing with the whole timeline argument in Al Horford and everyone concerned about his aging is Al Horford's not going to be the type of guy that's going to age with significant issues because he's never relied on athleticism. He's never relied on being ridiculously strong. He's just smart. He's a good shooter. He's mobile. The only real thing I could see declining is some of his mobility. But everything else is going to still be there. The passing, the shooting, the skills, that's still going to be there for most of that, like at least the 3 years out of 4 of that contract. And as for the mobility, if he can maintain that for 2 out of 4 years, I'd take that. Like, comparing that to a Kemba that ages, if Kemba loses his quickness and he's no longer able to drive into the lane and penetrate, that you lose a significant portion of his effectiveness.
Sure.
And now you're paying a 31 and 32-year-old Kemba like what, 37, 38, 39 million dollars?
If it's Supermax, yeah.
Well, if that's a sign-in trade. If we sign him, it's probably not a sign-in trade because I just don't really think that's going to happen.
Right.
And even if they probably won't sign him anyway, because I just don't think that's going to happen. But
I'd be curious.
That's just a hypothetical.
I'd be curious too on a sign and trade. Would he have a trade kicker in his contract like Anthony Davis that gets him like an extra 15%?
I don't believe it exists.
Okay.
In his current contract, and you don't usually see those in sign and trades because it's a new contract.
It's
so
waived.
How can there be a trade kicker?
Yeah, true. That'd have to be worked out ahead of time. Yeah, good point. Let's see. Facts God here is talking about some more discount spending, the likes of guys we've talked about before, like a Pat Beverly, a Dwayne Dedman, even like a Julius Randle he's got on the list, and Danny Green. If you could pick out a couple of those guys, I'd say 2 of those 4 guys to add, how would you kind of rank them?
So Horford, just to get it straight, Horford, Green, Randall, and then one more?
He had Pat Beverly, Dwayne Dedman, Julius Randle, and Danny Green on his list. But if you want to throw Horford in that discussion as well, we can.
Okay. I'll just keep it to Dedman because Horford's at another level compared to those other guys.
Yes, especially financially.
Well, and skill. I would take Horford's skill and overall ability too. But Dedman... in terms of preference, I'd probably put Green first, Beverly and Dedman on the same tier, and then Randall, because Randall's fit with Porzingis has significant potential to be catastrophic. And you might be forced to bring him off the bench like the Lakers did, just to have him be the most effective. And I don't want to pay a $20+ million guy, or at least I don't want to sign a $20+ million guy to just come off my bench and score like 16.
Yeah.
And still not really be much of a passer, even though he's kind of all right as a passer. But at the same time, he requires the ball to be effective like 99% of the time.
Gotcha. So you think his market would be $20+ million per year for Randall? I know he made 9 last year, obviously opted out. I know his money's going to go up significantly from that, but I was curious if he'd be in that 18 to 22 range. But yeah, if you're bringing him off the bench, that's going to be a damn expensive role player anyway.
Yeah, and I mean, you can start him, but you're going to have issues. You're going to have a lot of them. And you're going to be keeping him, like if you're signing that contract, it's probably not short. It's probably a long-term deal. So that would be my biggest concerns. I mean, I think he's probably getting paid somewhere between like 16 to 20 million. But I honestly have no idea because it depends on which front offices are really high on him.
Yeah, fair enough. We got someone asking in the comments about Dwayne Dedman's game a little bit. You want to do the scouting profile thing there? Not like the read it out, but just your kind of quick thoughts on Dwayne Dedman's game and what makes him such a great fit within our lineup.
Yeah. Dedman's game, and if you look on the face of it, it seems pretty straightforward. Mm-hmm. He's like a 6'11", 7-footer who's like 250 pounds, decently mobile, can get up at the rim, protects the rim, is semi-mobile in the like an open space, but not. He's probably not switching on to like guards, but at the same time, I would expect him to be able to switch out into like 3s, 4s, and 5s, and other 5s, and handle himself pretty well. And the offensive fit's what's much more intriguing because of the shooting ability. And he's developed that into a significant part of his game. It's no longer like he can only hit shots from like the corner or if he's wide open. He's hitting shots with arms in his face. He's hitting shots where off the handoff, one dribble, pull up. And it's pretty incredible to watch, honestly. Like, compared to where he was coming to the league, he was straight up pick and roll big man, protect the rim. That's all he did. And seeing how far he's come along now and what his game can provide to this team that's in desperate need of shot makers and defenders, and also veterans. Like, that's what the Mavs want. I mean, I don't know if I've seen anybody get closer to checking off those boxes that's available for under $10 million.
Yeah, I mean, if you can add a starting center of quality that fits what you want to do, and he's in that roughly $10 million price range or under, then yeah, that's a fantastic add. And that's one of the things that we've been talking about on the show for a little while, is adding multiple players that are quality additions. You don't necessarily have to swing for the fences with the one move like a Kemba Walker or trade assets, as some of the people previously were asking about, like the Clint Capella trade. Rather than going that route, you can still make your team much better and definitely add to your overall quality for a playoff push if you're adding players like Danny Green, 3-and-D players, tough-nosed point guards who can shoot the three ball well as well, like Patrick Beverley. I think there's a lot of value in adding guys like that. And Dedmon, yeah, if you're talking about adding multiple parts like that and you can get a starting center who fits well what you want to do, has had a quality NBA career. Nothing like flashy necessarily, but can do the dirty work and works alongside KP well for you for $10 million. That's great because you're going to be looking at giving KP a new deal that's going to pay him. What would he end up making per year? He'd be signing like a 5-year, 157, I want to say, is what I've been hearing for KP.
All I know is it would be like the same thing as the Giannis contract.
Yeah.
I think it might even be more because he made an All-Star game before his restricted deal went out. I'm not quite sure. But what I do know is, just really quickly, I love Danny Green, and I had him first in that ranking for a reason. He's not coming here.
Yeah, I don't see that happening.
Even if the Mavericks paid him somewhat more, which I don't think the Mavs can outpay other people, because there are people that are going to be coming for him in this free agent market. Like a defender that's able to shoot the lights out, I don't know what else you can ask for from a starter that's not a star. That's a wing. Like, what else can you realistically ask for? Like, that's just incredible. And he has championship pedigree. He's won 2 rings now. He brings that experience to your team. There's no way the Mavericks can nab him compared to the other contenders on this market right now.
Yeah.
Like, maybe the Pacers come for him. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, no, that would be another really good suitor for him. I think Toronto probably brings him back, though, because pretty much any champion other than the Mavericks are going to bring back title teams. At least the core parts of it, for sure. And he started off great in the finals, made a couple blunders in that deciding game late, but even still, I think he's a very valuable player for them.
Yeah, and also he's really close friends with Kawhi at this point.
Yep. And, he was traded with Kawhi from San Antonio. So, yeah, both rings for Kawhi have had Danny Green. Do you think then that could mean wherever Kawhi ends up going in free agency, if he does leave Toronto, that Danny Green looks to follow, perhaps? I don't think Kawhi's going to the Lakers, so Clippers have the caps.
No, if he goes to the West Coast, he's going to
Clippers.
LA Clippers.
Yeah, that's what I think as well.
But I don't think Green follows him unless the bag comes with it, because honestly, I think Green is so beloved in Toronto, they're going to pay him a lot.
Yeah.
And honestly, everyone's acting like Toronto, if they lose Kawhi, is going to be like a team that might not make the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs. Come on.
Yeah, especially in the East.
They'll probably be like a 5 or 4 seed.
Yeah, I was going to say like a 5 or 6 at least. But yeah, 4
especially with Siakam, another year of development.
Mm-hmm.
I would bet money on it if I could.
Yeah, I tend to agree on that front. I think the Raptors in the Eastern Conference are definitely still a playoff team, even if Kawhi leaves. But it does, to me, knock them out of real contender status in the East. Obviously, you trade DeRozan, and that you can't argue that it didn't work out for him. Obviously, getting a championship, but it's kind of like you get the title and then you still might lose Kawhi anyway. Well, for the Thunder, it worked out on the Paul George front, where even though they got bounced in the first round, they were still able to convince Paul to sign a long-term deal with them. I don't know if that'll work out for the Raptors, but at the very least, they accomplished way more than Oklahoma City did with their 1 year, in the sense that they got their definitive championship. I don't know that the Thunder are going to be able to do anything like that, even with the now extra 4 years or 3 years, more likely, of Paul George at this point.
And in addition, the Raptors are set up for the future. They have Siakam, Anunoby, Fred VanVleet. They have young pieces that'll help that team continue to be in the playoffs for a long time. And if Kawhi actually leaves, now you have cap space to go and sign somebody else. If the Raptors suddenly throw their hat in the ring for, I don't know, maybe they want to go after... What if they go and try to max out Chris Middleton? You never know. What if they go in that race? Or what if they go into the Kevin Durant race and say, hey, you can pull a KD on it again and go to the team that beat you in the finals? And we'll
I don't
give
think
you the
KD would
exact same
roll with that, but I get the thinking behind
he
it.
does like Drake, so
he
you
does
know that Drake has a tattoo of KD on his body. So.
Yeah, that is a weird fact that is true. Yes. I mean, I don't doubt that they'll try and get in on that. Now they'll have a little bit of sway, perhaps, because of the roster they have built. But Middleton, he opted in anyway. So, or did he opt in? No, you're right. He opted out, but he's going to do a long-term deal. That's why I stopped even thinking about the possibility of adding him. That and the fact that there's no way he leaves that Milwaukee Bucks team. Even if they did try and offer him a max, though, I don't see him leaving Milwaukee. As for Durant, they could do that because, they would take the step back while he's out. But I think KD, if he leaves Golden State, which I still think probably does happen, I think he's going to one of the New York teams, probably either Brooklyn or the Knicks.
If he goes to the Knicks, his career is done for.
I would not hate that.
I'd say that.
I'm still holding that little bit of bitterness. So. Yeah,
I'm not kidding, though. If he goes to the Knicks, it's over.
I kind of relish seeing what all has happened with the Knicks after trading Porzingis and all the crap that their fans have been talking with the Porzingis issues of the off season, and then they're talking about this master plan of Kyrie and KD. They were talking about having Zion. It's kind of setting up where it looks like they're going to end up with nothing, which would just be a little satisfying, honestly.
I would be willing to bet they get like Tobias Harris and like D'Angelo Russell or something.
Yeah.
That'd be funny as hell if D'Angelo went from Brooklyn to New York to the Knicks.
D'Angelo Russell?
Yeah.
That'd
be funny.
that would be a little bit amusing, yeah. So what are your thoughts on the possibility of Russell? He's a ball-dominant guy that I think needs the ball in his hands, but he is a 23-year-old all-star as well, and his max isn't a Kemba max in terms of cost per year. It's, I think, 23, 24 million compared to 30 or 32?
Yeah, it was something along those lines, but what I know with Russell is he really struggles to penetrate into the lane. And even with the shot creation, he needs the ball in his hands in order to really create his own shot for like a long time. He needs like 10 seconds. He can't quickly create his own shot unless he has a defender that's easily exploitable. Yeah. And for that reason, I'm out. And on top of that, I don't think he fits in with the culture here. I don't think Rick Carlisle would like him. And I just don't think that's the best interest of the team to sign D'Angelo. Like, whenever I've seen polls on Twitter about D'Angelo and Kemba, and I'm just like, no. Just like I said, D'Angelo or Kemba's like, no. That's my reply. Just no. Just don't give me either of them. They're not worth the investment. They're going to be disappointing at some point. And I think it's best to just round out this roster because I feel like we can fill our needs without needing to get a superstar. Well, not really even a superstar, more like a middling all-star.
Yeah.
That's what you're getting. And with D'Angelo, you're not even really getting an all-star. He's like that next tier after.
Is there another free agent that you're interested in? Perhaps Willie Cauley-Stein if he gets out of Sacramento?
No, do not bring up Willie Cauley-Stein. Oh my God. He's just a worse rebounding DeAndre.
Yeah, I just reiterate the questions that come through. It's the open forum that we do.
Good Lord, Willie, just stay away.
Yeah, I've never been a huge fan of his either.
And he's looking for money right now. Do not pay Willie Cauley-Stein if he is not going to gel with us anyway. There are much better solutions to be had. I would be on the lookout for Patrick Beverley, realistically. Dedmon, realistically. Who knows what's happening with Horford right now. Bojan's a potential, but I wouldn't bet on that happening because I feel like Indiana could pay him a ton of money.
Yeah. Okay.
Also, I think I said him already, but Satoransky, say it once, say it twice, say it three times. Al-Farouq Aminu. Those seem like the primary targets within range for the Mavericks right now.
Okay. Yeah, I'm interested for sure. It's going to be an exciting free agency, though. Let's see. It's like 5 o'clock next Sunday, our time, Central Time, when that hall opens up instead of midnight this year. So we are going to be live. We're going to back up the show a couple hours on Sunday so that we can be live during all the immediate madness. Probably go at least an hour and a half, if not 2 hours, for that show, covering the craze of free agency as guys start to agree to deals and sign.
Yeah, for sure. So speaking of free agents, technically, you want to go in and talk about undrafted free agents the Mavs have gotten into, or do you have anything else on the actual free agent front you want to speak on?
I think for now that's good on the active free agent front. What did you have to chime in? You were just saying.
Okay, well, first off, let's just get this out the way. The Mavericks signed a player from the Lebanese league by the name of Wael Arakji. Just first try on that pronunciation. As far as I know, he impressed the Mavericks in a workout minicamp, and that's what got him on the team.
Yep.
However, he's never really played basketball at a high league. He's always played in either the Lebanese league or like the Chinese league. And I looked at some of his highlights just to get an idea of like his jump shot and how he moves. He's decently fluid. Jump shot is kind of slow, kind of catapultish. Needs time to get it off. But extends it out to deep range. Has shot it pretty well over the past couple of years, but has sometimes been really inconsistent. In addition, he's a solid passer, penetrating into the lane. From what I can tell, he's able to make some crafty passes on the move, even in traffic.
Yeah,
so that's something.
Okay.
The only defensive highlight I saw was him reading a passing lane and getting a steal. So that's not good.
So you're saying he needs a little bit of time to season, perhaps overseas still.
I don't think he's coming over to the NBA or the G League. I think what this is going to do for him realistically, he's going to come over to Summer League. He's going to get his face in front of some European teams that are going to be around. And hopefully he gets himself on a team that's in an actual, like, legitimate European league. Like, I would love to see him go to, like, the Adriatic League or something and get some minutes there because he just never played at a high level of competition. The closest thing to a high-level competition he's played in is, like, the FIBA Asia World Cup qualifiers and the FIBA Asia Cup, where he put up a pretty similar performance to what I've spoken on before. So a key issue for him, I can tell offensively, is that he's very inconsistent from the free throw line. He is typically shooting in like the high 60s, low 70s. And as a guard, that's concerning. Yeah,
for sure. I was going to ask you as well, I don't think we've talked about him yet. What are your thoughts on Josh Reeves?
Yeah, I was going to get into him. They signed him post-draft to a two-way contract. It is also, I believe, rumored that Roby will end up on a two-way, which in that case, I think Kostas probably is not getting signed to the full roster, and Macon could be, but probably won't be.
Okay.
So they either end up back in the G League on the Texas Legends, available to get picked off by any other team, or they're gone.
Yeah, that's definitely, if Kostas gets let go in that case, that would definitely upset a lot of the fan base because he is a very common person people ask about in the chat and on the stream and all that. The update on him, his role, his future role here. I think some of that might be name value from the family kind of carrying out, but
all of it is.
Yeah,
all of it.
I like him as a project, but yeah, I'm not holding my breath of him having a significant role in the next year or so. Like a significant.
I would have bet on him having a significant role the next 3 years.
Wow. Okay.
And on an NBA team.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying he could go over to Europe and get significant minutes potentially, but he's too raw. Simply put, he's far too raw. He came out of college averaging 5 points a game at Dayton, and he was like a sophomore. So, no. He should have stayed at Dayton, and he probably could have shown some improvement, and he probably would have been averaging a lot more points and just doing more stuff on the court, whereas now it's like, well, he's going to be in the G League, and he's developing, but what can you realistically develop him into with how old he already is?
And what's his age again?
And he's 22 now. I'm almost
22.
30.
Okay.
Let me check, though, just to be factual.
Right. Yeah.
Closest Antetokounmpo is 21, turns 22 in November.
Okay. So he'll get a little bit into the season, a couple months, but nothing crazy.
Yeah.
But
and who knows if he's even on this roster.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely going to frustrate some of the fans for that, just because he is a fan favorite even as a project. And especially last season, you saw some people kind of clamoring for him to get minutes when we were already miles out of the playoff race anyway. And when you're theoretically embracing tanking, people want to see just the raw prospect thrown out there that at least will generate some interest. So
it would have been very ugly basketball to watch.
I still would have been interested to see it. But yes, I agree. It would have been quite early to give him significant minutes like that. Yeah,
and we'll see, but I'm just not very confident in his NBA outlook. I think a realistic expectation is that he ends up going overseas and making a couple $100,000 for a few years.
Yeah.
But I don't see him as being any sort of long-term NBA player that plays more than like 15 to 20 games. And that would be still an incredible achievement for him. Like, let's be honest with ourselves. Kostas was not supposed to get drafted.
Yeah, he was the last pick.
He was not even supposed to get a two-way contract. What was supposed to happen with a Kostas type of player, after he realizes he wasn't supposed to get drafted at all, he goes to Summer League. He might get, if he plays really well, which he sort of did, he had his flashes, he probably gets an Exhibit 10. And then he gets like a $50,000 bonus plus the G League contract. And then he's on the G League until he gets good. Or he goes overseas if he finds a contract off there. And he probably doesn't come back to the NBA for like multiple years until like he's really refined his game, has become like either a better shooter or stronger in order to play like a center role for him.
Mm-hmm.
Like with Brokoff, what happened for him was he was just too skinny to play in the NBA. So he had to go and get stronger overseas, and he added more dribbling to his game, and that's what really helped him. And he also was not lucky, but fortunate with whenever he signed a second overseas contract, he got onto a team that was elected to go into the EuroLeague whenever they did not win the Russian League. And that team proceeded to go all the way to the Final Four of the EuroLeague. And a lot of those players got poached on either NBA or better EuroLeague teams like Real Madrid. And then Brokoff, after that, would not play in the EuroLeague again, but he had proven himself in that level of competition and then kept showing he could be even better than that.
Gotcha.
So that's what got him back. And he'll probably enjoy a nice 4 or 5 years here. But he's able to shoot the ball. Like Kostas. I mean, what are the odds he ever develops a jump shot?
Well, I mean, that's the talk about Giannis even in terms of jump shot. You can still bring other elements to it.
Giannis is a different basketball player.
Sure.
Like, you're just different planets.
Yeah. Like,
Kostas is not the handler that Giannis is. Kostas is not even the athlete that Giannis is.
Right.
As mobility-wise, he's explosive, but he can't really handle the ball. Like, Giannis was still a good handler for his size when he was young.
Yeah.
He just couldn't shoot, and he was kind of raw as a finisher. And he was just raw and making shots.
Right.
So, yeah, it's unfortunate what's happened to Kostas, but I hope the best for him. Anyway, do you want me to go into Reeves?
Yeah, give me a defensive kind of profile on Reeves. I see people kind of talking about him and his defense being the main asset he can offer the team.
Rightfully so. Well, I'll go and throw this out there for you. Have you heard of the Portsmouth Invitational Tournament?
I have not.
It is basically a combine / tournament invitational event for all college basketball seniors that elect to go, that are like semi-prospects. And He was all PIT first team defense. And I think he won Defensive Player of the tournament. I'm not sure about that, but I can check that. And I know he was listed as one of the best performers in that tournament. That's not what got him drafted, but that's just an example.
Yeah.
In college, he won Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year this year on a team that just lost Tony Carr, who got drafted and is now playing in Italy. So that team lost a significant guard talent, and that's what really hurt Reeves this year because he got exposed as a person that really struggles to handle the ball, which was obvious for a long time. But what the positives offensively for Reeves would come down to, he's an instinctive cutter, he's a willing passer, and he's a capable jump shooter.
Okay.
That's pretty much all he has. He's also athletic.
Yeah.
So he's going to be able to crash the glass and also get lobs. With a 6 foot, he's 6'4.5" with a 6'8.5" wingspan. I'm gonna have to fact check that. It might be 6'9.5" actually.
So do you think Reeves could have a potentially Bruce Bowen type impact? I see that as a wishful comp thrown out there by someone.
Comparison. As a person that was like 5 years old when Bowen retired.
Sure.
You can't comment on Bowen specifically as much. But I think that's realistic. That sort of player could be his upside, an athletic guy that shooting can be rather limiting, but is a really strong defender. I think Bowen has a reputation for being more of an on-ball defender, which while Reeves is capable, Reeves makes his money reading the passing lane.
Okay.
He is one of the most instinctive readers of passing lanes I've ever seen for a guard prospect. Or like a guard size prospect, even though he's more of a wing than a guard, but he's sort of guard size in that respect.
Gotcha.
And that's really what takes his defensive game to the next level with his athleticism. He's able to intercept passes and just grab and go on the break, jam, and you're like, oh my God, what? And it's remarkable to watch, honestly.
Cool. I mean, that's good. They need
pretty
defenders.
Humble as well as a character, so. I listened to some of his interviews. He seems very interested in just trying to contribute to his team. The only thing that showed that he was kind of overconfident was that he compared himself to Kawhi Leonard, but I think he didn't mean it in a direct way. It's more of defensively.
Sure. Yeah. Well, I'm interested in the pickup for sure. Hopefully he can develop into something for him, and they can give him a little bit of time to be allowed that development. So, but yeah, I'm intrigued by what they were able to pull off. I think those second round picks could, if they're putting full attention in the draft, which, if they got their guy and if they're right about Roby being someone that can come in and make a positive impact for them, not just be dodo insurance, then I think that's a solid pickup, and getting additional second round picks is another, that's a savvy move if you can pull it off and you're right. So,
yeah, those second-round picks help you get off Lee, by the way. Everyone
Courtney
was
Lee,
yeah,
because you'll have to send something in return.
Contract.
Yeah,
the Mavs are everyone's the Mavs could attach their current contract to get off Lee. Well, guess what? Now you can, their current pick. Well, guess what? Now you can attach 2 second-round picks to get off Courtney Lee.
True.
And actually, y'all forget, but from, I believe it was the Bogut trade, the Mavericks got another second-round pick from the Warriors, which will activate in 2020. And that's
totally
important because guess who's injured? Kevin Durant and Klay Thompson.
Yep.
So the Mavericks will probably have a second-round pick in the mid-40s, in addition to the Utah pick, which will probably be closer to 50. So you have 2 second-round picks, and they don't have their own. So that's something you can make something happen with. It's not like they're 59th anymore, which was the expectation with that pick. So they can be doing something with those picks, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with them. Also, it's worth mentioning that next year's class is a bit deeper in the late first, early second-ish range. There's some better talent in that group, and there's a lot more starter and rotation level players in that draft than there will be in this current draft.
Okay. Well, I think that's going to bring us to the end of this show here. Max, thanks for coming on. Always good to get your insight and everything on it. You always have a good scouting eye for the the more in-depth analysis of some of these players. A lot of value in that for sure. We'll be back on here next Sunday to do the free agency bonanza live stream. We'll be doing that one at probably starting at about 4:45, jumping on about 15 minutes ahead of time before the active signing window opens up, and that'll give us a lot of fun. So if you want to check that out for sure, be cool to have you in the comments as well on that one. But tell them where they can find some of your stuff.
Yeah, so obviously you can find some of my previous pieces on the Dallas Prospect. I also am working on a Roby profile soon. I'm going to try to get that out before Summer League.
Okay.
And then also on top of that, I'm working on some pieces for Lock Draft. I got a evaluation of all the current teams in the draft. And then in addition, I have to finalize my big board, which at this point in time is not finalized. And I'm going to have it with ranked based on partially what players ended up on what teams. And that's going to be really fun to get out there. So that's all I got on the lookout. And then you can follow me on Twitter at MaxScouts. Thanks for having me on. I'm really looking forward to the upcoming free agency window, and hopefully the Mavs do something interesting and don't just sit on their hands.
Yeah, I think they'll do something. I think they're going to be aggressive suitors in this. I don't know that they get a superstar, but I think they make one or more moves for sure that make the team a lot better coming into this year. And I think they will be. I think they'll be in talks with a lot of different players this free agency period. So, all right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We'll be back next Sunday. Until then, remember, every legend was once a prospect. Salute.
Yeet.